You just look at me.
You just feeling jealous? He's like, you never look at my camera that way.
Yes.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Bake It Up a Notch. I'm Erin McDowell, and now that it's starting to get warm outside, I'm ready to chill out in the kitchen. We split this episode into two parts so you don't get brain freeze, but in the first part, what we're going to do is talk about the basics. That means all the different types of ice cream that there are and how to make those ice cream bases to get them ready for churning. In part two, we're gonna talk about churning, all the different methods for it, and of course, all the fun things you can make when you make your own homemade ice cream. As always, we have a ton of delicious recipes in this episode, and they are all linked in the video description below. And we also have a very special guest. My friend and mentor, Rose Levy Berenbaum, is going to be joining us because I had the pleasure of working on her book, Rose's Ice Cream Bliss. I honestly learned so much from Rose working on this book. I was the food stylist for it, and so I really made almost every single ice cream and, most importantly, tasted all of them too. Rose really knows her stuff, and we can benefit from all of her scientific knowledge in this episode, so she's going to be helping us out with tips and tricks along the way. Please be sure to click like and subscribe so you can be made aware of all our new episodes as they become available. Now, let's get freezing? All right, we're gonna talk about a lot of different kinds of frozen desserts, and they all sort of have different ingredients that make them up. Butterfat is the fatty component of milk. It's made up of both saturated and unsaturated fatty acids. And the percentage of butterfat is one of the ways we define and differentiate different kinds of frozen desserts from one another. First up, let's talk about a classic custard-based ice cream. Now, custard-based ice creams have to have a minimum of 10% butterfat, but actually some commercial varieties can have up to 30% butterfat. That's one of the reasons why a lot of ice creams are so rich and creamy tasting. One of the most classic forms of regular ice cream is made using a custard base. Now, that custard base can have a lot of different types of ingredients in it, but it's typically thickened with egg yolks. So let's talk to Rose about exactly how this custard base is made.
Yolks are miracle ingredient. They emulsify other ingredients, especially in the ice cream. This is what the main thickening is. These days, the average yolk is about 3 grams less than it used to be. So that's why we put a range. When we never say 6 yolks, we say 6 to 9. Now, I'm sure some people are wondering, so how do you decide which it should be? Either you weigh it or you use the volume. But don't just assume that you can use the lowest number, because then you won't have as good an ice cream. The reason that it's not necessary, that I find it not necessary to temper egg yolks when using basic method, is that I'm adding the egg yolks, the milk, and the sugar and any other flavorings all together, and then bringing it up to the 170, 180. So we're not adding a hot mixture to the egg yolk that would curdle it if it weren't tempered first.
Ice cream is actually a lot easier to make than a lot of people realize, and it doesn't have a ton of ingredients, which is great too. But it's very important to have all your ingredients ready from the get-go, because once you start, the process can move pretty quickly. You could actually lead to scrambled eggs if you're scrambling in the middle of the recipe. We're going to make Rose's chocolate ice cream from her book, Ice Cream Bliss, and it has a couple special kind of flavoring ingredients in it to make it extra chocolatey. We have some finely chopped chocolate in a heat-safe bowl with a strainer on top, and then we're gonna stir together a few of the dry ingredients. We've got cocoa powder, we've got sugar, we have malt powder, and Rose says that this just adds extra chocolatey flavor to her ice cream recipe. And she doesn't even like malt, but she loves it in this recipe. That's how important it is. And we're also gonna add a little bit of espresso powder and of course a little bit of salt. Now, espresso is another ingredient that really brings out the chocolatiness in any chocolate recipe. Just gonna go ahead and give those a quick whisk to combine. And this is good too because it's also gonna help kind of sift that cocoa powder a little bit. Now that all our ingredients are combined, we're gonna head over to the stovetop to start cooking our custard base. Rose's methods of making ice cream, I really learned so much working on her book because she does some things a little bit differently than I had done them in making ice cream before. But the good news is some of these tips are really adaptable to any ice cream recipe. We're going to go ahead and add some ingredients into our pot. We've got our milk. We're also going to add a portion of our heavy cream. Now, Rose saves some of the heavy cream to add later at the end of the recipe. This helps cool the base down. Then we're going to add our glucose or the corn syrup. Rose especially loves glucose, and we're going to talk about exactly why a little bit later. All right, we're also going to add our egg yolks and our sugar mixture with the cocoa and all those flavoring ingredients too. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stir all of these ingredients to combine. And the goal here is to kind of stir until the sugar and everything is incorporated and the sugar is really starting to dissolve. Now what we're going to do is we're going to heat it until the final texture is pretty similar to that of heavy cream. The other visual cues you often see in custard sauce recipes include being able to draw a line on the back of the spoon. All right, so I've just stirred this all together with a silicone spatula, and now we're going to cook it to 170 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 79 degrees to 82 degrees Celsius.
It's the standard for when you're making a cream sauce with egg yolk. See, egg yolk has an enzyme called amylase, and it can thicken beautifully, and then the next morning when you're eating something, it's thinned out completely. It will be destroyed at 160.
I've got my thermometer handy so I can check it as I'm cooking, and we want to stir the whole time over relatively low heat, like medium low. You just don't want to cook too fast because we don't want to end up with any chunks of protein that has coagulated. We don't want to make scrambled eggs in our ice cream base. All right, so once we get to that perfect temperature, we're gonna go ahead and strain this, and you wanna scrape really well. And we do this for a few different reasons. We're straining out any clumps that happened accidentally while we were cooking. And there's also this protein strand in the egg that no matter what, it's always going to be a little bit firmer, even if you cook very delicately. So we're just straining to make sure that our base is totally smooth. And we're straining it while it's hot onto that finely chopped chocolate. Rose mentions that if you add this and you still have little flecks of chocolate after you stir it together, that you can strain it again. I kind of like the little flecks of chocolate, if any remain, because it just gives you some of those little bites that are extra chocolatey. So either way is fine. This is one of those times where there's definitely not just one right way to do it. Once we are sure that all of that chocolate is melted or you have it kind of all combined, we can go ahead and add the remaining cream. This is gonna be a really good episode.
In almost every recipe, there's milk and there's cream. And I always start by putting all of the milk in the base recipe that I'm heating, because cream will lose some of its quality if it keeps getting heated. So that way, if you add it at the end, it actually cools off the mixture, which is what you want before you refrigerate it. And it keeps the flavor.
We also add the vanilla at the end of the cooking process, just because if we cook with that vanilla, we're gonna cook off a lot of the flavor. Now, what we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to refrigerate this till it gets to the ideal temperature for churning. If you wanna do it really fast, you can do it in an ice bath. And we actually talked about that in our episode where we made creme anglaise for our gingerbread cake, and that will help it chill down a lot faster. Rose says to refrigerate this for at least 8 hours, but the most important thing is that it's no higher in temperature than 43 degrees Fahrenheit or 6 degrees Celsius. Let's get this into a container and put it in the fridge, and then later we'll churn it. Let's talk about Philadelphia style ice cream. Now, Philadelphia style actually has pretty similar stats in terms of the overall base fat content of 10% that classic ice cream has. The main difference is there are no egg yolks. This is a great alternative to classic ice cream if you're allergic to eggs or can't eat eggs for any reason, and it also produces a slightly icier ice cream. I find one of the ways to combat that iciness is just to let it soften at room temperature for maybe a little longer than you would regular ice cream. I really love Philadelphia style ice cream because I feel like the flavor of the dairy or the other ingredients that you're adding really shines through in a completely different way. Without that additional fat, without those egg yolks, it's just a very pure flavor. And because of that, I love to make Philadelphia style ice creams with fruit flavors added. So we're gonna make my blueberry Philadelphia style ice cream, which is from my first book, The Fearless Baker. And I already got it started because the first step of this process is to cook the blueberries with some vanilla. I think vanilla makes blueberries taste even blueberrier. So I really, really love to add vanilla bean when I'm working with blueberries. And in this case, we're gonna go ahead and puree this blueberry mixture. Yes, that's right. the whole vanilla bean. I'm just gonna blend it on up, and it's gonna be so delicious. I'm just gonna use the immersion blender. If you have a high power blender, that would also work great, or a food processor would work too. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and strain my pureed blueberry mixture, just in case there's any pieces of vanilla beans still in there and any of the solids. So see, even though I've cooked those blueberries till they were very soft, we still have a lot of little fibrousness here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour in the milk and cream. And this is a good time to point out, a lot of Philadelphia style ice cream recipes don't really require any cooking at all. The only cooking you really need to do is if you want to infuse your dairy product with some flavor like vanilla beans, spices, coffee. We're gonna let this cool down before we churn it, just to make sure it's really chilled and rested. When I churn Philadelphia style ice cream, I like to churn it to about soft serve consistency and then let the rest of the freezing happen in the freezer. But for now, let's get this base nice and cold so it's ready to churn later. Okay, let's talk gelato. Now, gelato is incredibly rich and creamy, but it will actually surprise people to know that gelato is usually significantly lower butterfat percentage than classic ice cream. More at 4 to 9% butterfat is what we're looking at with gelato. It's also churned in a way that incorporates significantly less air. That makes the gelato much denser, and that's why it has that incredibly creamy texture. My best recipe for gelato is to go to a gelateria. So let's go. Where is the best place to go for some gelato? Obviously, we had to come to Italy, to the gelato counter, to get the very best. Okay. This is a hard decision. Let's try a taste of your favorite. You said your favorite's hazelnut, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. It's so toasty and nutty, and it's the denseness of gelato that makes it so different from ice cream, because ice cream has so much air incorporated in it, but this is just like silky, it melts in your mouth. While we're trying nutty flavors, can we try the Sicilian pistachio? Oh my God. Is that a popular flavor too? Ooh, actually, this is one of my favorite flavors, stracciatella. As the gelato is coming out of the machine, they fold melted chocolate into it, and it makes it speckled with little chocolate chunks. But it's so different than just a chocolate chip or a chocolate chunk ice cream. It's just one of my favorites. Thank you. You can see the varied sizes of chocolate chunks. It's the best. It's so good. I thought I was done. I'm not. I'm gonna try everything. You have some great flavors that are classic, like with these Amarena cherries in it. That's probably like one of the more Italian, authentic gelatos. Thank you. Oh my God. Wow. The cherries are so tart. It's like cherries and cream. Wow. Next, let's talk sorbet. Sorbet is made from fruit puree and sugar. It has no additional dairy added, and so it really is a very pure fruit flavor. Now, just as the fat content is really, really important for ice creams, gelato, etc., the sugar content is really important for sorbet. If you're ever inclined to reduce the sugar in a recipe, just remember, it may make it firmer, icier, or more difficult to scoop. If you want to make a sorbet with fresh fruit, it's usually cooked a little while in some sugar to help soften it so that you can make a puree. Blend it up, strain it to remove things like seeds or fibers for the smoothest sorbet consistency. Sometimes you can also just use already made purees. You can find these in the freezer section of gourmet and specialty stores. Next up, sherbet. The most important thing to know about sherbet is that I love it a whole bunch. I love sherbet. I feel like sherbet doesn't get enough love and attention in the frozen dessert world. It's delicious, it's creamy, it's fresh, it's light. Sherbets use some dairy in the base, but they also have to have some other kind of flavoring liquid. So because of this, it's often associated with fruit flavors, things like orange sherbet or lime sherbet. But the base doesn't actually have to be fruit. It can be other flavorful liquids, things like coffee, tea, or even soda. Today, I'm going to make my version of rainbow sherbet. Now, what I have here is the sherbet that I just churned. And what I have here are my syrups made from different fruit flavors. I have orange, I have lime, and I have a homemade raspberry syrup. These others are just fresh squeezed juices. You can reduce them down, make them extra thick and syrupy. You can add food coloring to make the colors even brighter. Now I'm gonna divide it into 3 bowls. We're just gonna fold a little bit of that syrup into each one, and then we can kind of layer and swirl them into our final serving container. First up, let's add a little orange. These bases might look a little soft after you add the fruit syrups to them, but don't worry. One of the main reasons we do it this way is so you don't have to churn 3 separate ice cream bases. We're just gonna churn the ice cream, then add the flavors to those individually, then it'll firm back up in the freezer. Once our syrups have been added to the sherbet base, we can just kind of layer them in and swirl them into whatever storage container we want to use. Right now I'm using a loaf pan. Now that they're all layered in, time to get this back in the freezer so it can freeze until firm and scoopable. Oh! Yes! Wow.
That deserves a round of applause.
Oh, that makes me insanely happy. Of course, there are tons of different kinds of frozen desserts. Here's a few more you should know about. Frozen yogurt is typically churned to be about soft serve consistency and is really creamy and delicious. But all it is sweetening or flavoring yogurt slightly and churning it to be a frozen dessert. My fellow Midwesterners will know all about frozen custard. Frozen custard is made very similarly to a custard-based ice cream, but with a higher ratio of egg yolks. That makes it more yellow in color and also creamier and richer in texture. The popular rolled ice cream style originates from Thailand, where it's also sometimes called stir-fried or fried ice cream. It's made by pouring an ice cream base onto a frozen surface after it's rolled up into little ice cream rolls and served that way. I actually have a great method for making this at home using my no-churn ice cream base recipe. Dondurma, which originates from Turkey, is sometimes called Turkish ice cream or battered ice cream. It gets its signature stretchy texture from an ingredient called salep. For more on this, let's talk to Rosalie Berenbaum.
When I first heard about it, I had never even seen it or tasted it, and it didn't exist in this country. The only reason I decided to put it in was I thought it was the most amazing thing that you could stretch the ice cream just about like that. So I discovered that there were 2, especially one critical element, and it's called salep, which is the root of orchids. And then I heard that mastic will make it even better. Mastic is kind of like a gum, and people think, well, it doesn't have that much flavor, but the point is you can flavor it with whatever you want. You know, it could be cherry, it could be chocolate. The main thing is about the texture.
Mochi, an incredibly delicious dough made from glutinous rice flour, can be wrapped around balls of ice cream to make one of my favorite desserts of all time. It's actually a really fun and easy project to do at home. You can even use store-bought ice cream for it if you want. Indian kulfi is egg-free but made with a dairy base. It's not churned, so there's no air incorporation, which makes it incredibly creamy and delicious. One of my favorite recipes is in the Genius Desserts cookbook. So good. Glucose or corn syrup helps extend the shelf life of ice cream. This is especially important with homemade ice creams, which have a real tendency to formulate ice crystals. Glucose or corn syrup prevent that even after the ice cream has been churned and during storage.
Glucose is more concentrated, essentially. It also has a slightly different, better acidity and ability to prevent crystallization. You can get the same exact texture, and I discovered this when I was developing recipes for rolled fondant. You can take corn syrup, bring half of it to a full boil, add it to the other half, and you have the exact water content that you would of glucose. That was one of my really proud moments, that I could enable people to have the same effect without having to search it out.
Glucose in corn syrup can also help stabilize an ice cream base by helping prevent too large of air bubbles from forming during churning, which is going to make for a creamier end product. It also keeps the ice cream softer and easier to scoop, even when it's frozen solid. A small quantity of any kind of booze also will help prevent formulation of ice crystals, which can make for smoother, creamier ice cream, and of course, it adds great flavor too. I have so much to say about ice cream that we're just getting started. This is a perfect place to take a break, so come back for our part 2 episode where we're going to be churning ice cream and making tons of different yummy desserts with it. I might need a moment alone.